Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
Welcome to the Earth 2 podcast, the show that charts the development of the pre-crisis DC Comics multiverse and the legacy of the Golden Age characters through the Silver and Bronze Age of comics. I'm Logan McFarlane.
I'm Steve Higgins.
I'm Peter Watson.
And I'm David Steele. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Full house this week for episode 3 of our contribution to the magnificent effort that is JSAPRIL, or our third instalment of what Peter has decided belatedly to call...
I can't believe it's not the Justice Society! Or JSA.
Yes. And we come to the next person sat around the table on the cover of All-Star Comics number 3, and it is Alan Scott, the original Green Lantern.
Yay!
So, as we've said previously, Peter has done all the vast majority of the legwork on this one, and he's uncovered another one here that follows a kind of slightly familiar trope. But Peter, what are we reading from now?
We are reading from the fall issue number 13 of the original Green Lantern series.
That's right, published on the 15th of September 1944.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter will now tell us about the cover.
Well, the fall issue number 13 in Green Lantern is at the top. 10 cents, it says. There is a huge newspaper background, which is very cool. We have Alan Scott Green Lantern rushing in from the left with Doiby Dickles in the corner following him, rolling up his sleeves ready for some action. They are running towards two hoods wearing very gangster suits with big ties and pinstripes and plaid and fedoras. They're both brandishing guns and they have a blonde bombshell behind them that it looks like they're trying to abscond with, kidnap. Who knows? Who knows?
Will she appear in the story? Or is this a Defenders 39 situation?
And there's a big advert on the newspaper, which is very predominant, and it says, "Help wanted. Matter of life and death. Immediate assistance needed. Applicant must be able to cope with the shrewdest crooks of the underworld, who have banded together to form crime's most sinister syndicate. The right man for this job can name his own salary. Call or write Gotham Globe T169. Only Green Lantern need apply."
So, after all that, we jump into the story. A caption once again sets the scene.
Take the mystic potency of an ancient green lamp. Potency which enables a man to walk through walls and give him immunity to metals for 24 hours after he has touched the power ring to the green lamp. Combine it with the tremendous willpower of Alan Scott, and you have Green Lantern.
Beautiful Green Lantern logo with Alan's head and collar poking out of the centre of the lantern. There's a large image of Doiby Dickles, Green Lantern's chubby pal, in his traditional yellow shirt and large brown trousers. It feels like ages since we did his Doiby Alien Princess Green Lantern 45 story.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Great fun.
That was a lockdown walk when I listened to that one morning in Queen's Park.
Yes.
Anyway, Doiby and Alan symbolically bursting through a sheet of newspaper. And there's another caption, well, not really, it's a larger version of the newspaper advertisement. And Peter's going to read it for us again in case we missed it the last time.
Help wanted, again. Matter of life and death. Immediate assistance needed. Applicant must be a man able to fight in face of all odds. Must be strong, courageous, clever, and honest. Able to cope with the shrewdest crooks of the underworld who have banded together to form crime's most sinister syndicate. The right man for this job can name his own salary. Call or write Gotham Globe T169. Only Green Lantern need apply.
And there's another little caption that indicates this is by Martin O'Dell. Peter, I will ask you to rotate your head slightly to the right and look on the wall there. See that little sketch of Alan Scott by Martin O'Dell?
Yes, I think that'll be bonus material this week, coming up on the podcast.
Could be. My friend Gareth. I don't know if Gareth actually listens. Gareth, if you're listening, hello. Gareth got me that one year when he was over in San Diego.
Wow.
I think Marty died within about a year or two after that, actually. So, Well, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about posting that in the socials, but that shall happen. Right, now listeners, this is a dense one, so bear with us as we do our best to get through it. Another caption.
An amazing announcement set in bold black type in all Gotham's papers opens our strange story.
And we see a newspaper advertisement which reads, "Attention Green Lantern, we need your help desperately. Come to Gotham Explorers Club Museum at 6 p.m. And that just reminds me of the Craig Ferguson routine about the Explorers Club. Oh, you want to join the Explorers Club, do you? Well, there's your knife, there's your potato. And then there's another caption.
A few hours later, a giant sky ad screams the same SOS.
And we see members of the public in silhouette looking up at the sky and a message which appears to read, "Calling Green Lantern." Interesting. We then cut to the inside of a radio studio, and an announcer with a sheet of paper in his hand is saying,
Next week, the federal government begins its long-delayed investigation of the Krupp Diamond Syndicate, and...
He's interrupted by a colleague who yells, "Psst," hands him another piece of paper, and another caption reads,
Yes, even in the city's radio studios, the strange urgent call is broadcast.
And the announcer gets a much better close-up here as he reads,
Flash, we interrupt our regular program to make the following urgent request. Green Lantern, wherever you are, please read the ad printed in all papers.
A slow dissolve or a quick dissolve, and a caption reads,
The frantic message is also relayed to amusement parks.
Amusement parks, my goodness. Yes, we see Alan Scott and Doiby Dickles. Alan Scott and his civvies. We just see him from the back here, actually. Very lazy art from my mutual friend, Mr. Nodell. The crowds are cutting about. We can see it in the background, an attraction, the words clearly reading freaks. Wow,
Gasp.
How modern. Alan and Doiby cutting around, and Alan is saying,
What a wonderful day off this has been, Doiby. Away from everything.
but then we can hear coming through a speaker a voice saying,
Attention, Green Lantern!
Doiby hears this and says, Hey, Alan, listen. The radio voice continues,
Read the ad in today's papers. Urgent!
Hey, that's for you! But he's interrupted because Alan shoves a hand over his mouth to stop him yapping and says,
Shut up, Doiby. Wait till we get out of here. A few minutes later...
See Doiby and Alan taking the train and reading a newspaper. Doiby saying, Well, what do you know about that?
This ad sounds mighty fishy if you ask me.
And we then see them rushing up a flight of stairs, presumably to Alan's apartment building. Doiby following, saying, Hey, what's the rush?
It's almost 6 o'clock, stupid. If we're going to keep that date, we'll have to rush.
But Alan, Lantern, you can't keep that date. Maybe it's a trap. And Alan says as he's putting on his Green Lantern uniform,
If crooks are out to trap me, they'll try again sooner or later, so it might as well be sooner. Then an ancient ring touches a mystic lamp, and a solemn oath resounds.
Brilliant, beautiful silhouette shot of Alan charging his power ring now as he recites the oath.
In brightest day, in darkest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. High into the dusky sky rockets Green Lantern.
Yep, more silhouette action as GL flies along, carrying Doiby beneath him. We can see them approaching a fancy-looking building with many steps and columns. Green Lantern says,
There's the Explorers Museum, Doiby, right down there.
But Lantern, look at that crowd in front of the doors. What gives? Our perspective shifts so that we're standing at the back of the crowd as Green Lantern and Doiby descend, and this crowd seems to be made up entirely of other Green Lanterns. One of them says, Holy smoke, here comes another Green Lantern. Doiby remarks, Moida, all these impostors has answered the ad. And this prompts one of the other men dressed as Green Lantern to say,
Who's an imposter? I'm Green Lantern and you're all phonies. As 6 o'clock chimes, the heavy museum doors swing slowly open.
Yes, and all of the Green Lanterns and our Green Lantern and Doiby all make their way in, and great shot of a couple of them here. There's one bald guy looking very severe, one guy with a blonde crew cut, one with kind of straighter, swept back blonde hair as opposed to Alan's wavy hair. And Doiby observes, Look, Lantern, them bombs has even got phony power rings. And we see indeed that the two GLs immediately in front of Doiby have rings on their right hands, flashing away merrily. Our GL says,
Yes, so I see. Flashlight bulbs wired to batteries in their sleeves. Very neat indeed. But as the assorted Green Lanterns enter, a grim surprise awaits them.
Yes, one of the GLs yells,
Hey, look out!
and another observes,
Their weapons are coming to life!
Yeah, because we see swords and axes and picks and pikes and all sorts of things flying into midair and descending all towards them. The bald, slightly overweight Green Lantern who we saw in a previous panel panics and yells, Let me out of here!
Looking very much like the panicked guy in the front of Action Comics #1.
Maybe it is him.
And as the impostors vainly flash counterfeit power rings...
We see our GL with his ring, it seems, on his left hand, must point that out, flashing a couple of beams and gathering up all the weapons as Doiby excitedly declares, Observe, ladies and gents! The one and only genuine 100% Green Lantern is now taking care of the situation.
And Doiby, don't forget to mention I'm copyrighted and my ring's patented.
Awesome. Next panel, things have settled down a little bit. They're all moving into the museum as Green Lantern says,
Well, come on, Doiby, let's keep moving.
Doiby turns to the bald chap beside him and says, Say, pal, do you really claim you're the Lantern? And this guy replies, Who then should I be? Do I look like Wonder Woman to yous?
That's Wonder Woman's contribution for JSAPRIL there. We cover it all here on the Earth 2 podcast.
I did suggest a Wonder Woman story, but I think the volume of Wonder Woman doubles and duplicates kind of put you off.
It's worth a season to itself.
Yes, maybe next year. Right.
Again, an unwelcome surprise offers gruesome death.
Yes, this is fascinating. The room that they've moved into appears to have models of bears and gorillas and apes and things, and they seem to, well, very helpfully, one of the Ersatz Green Lantern yells,
Ah! Them animals! They're alive!
and one Green Lantern, whose mask has fallen over his mouth in his panic, yells,
I'm getting out of here! Prado!
Doiby, however, is not afeared. He steps forward, punching out one of the Bigfoot-type creatures, saying, Look at them phony Green Lanterns scram! Use a think they'd show more noise just out of respect for the guy they're imitating.
And again, the power ring lashes out to curb the menace.
Yep, again, 3 flashes of energy bursting from Green Lantern's power ring, securing, slowing, stopping the approaching animals, as GL says,
Well, I'll show them how I do it, Doiby. Maybe they can pick up the trick if they practice enough.
They move into another room of the museum. We can see a sign that reads Neanderthal Hall, a couple of skeletons and some what looks like models of cavemen. Doiby says, Golly, what's this spooky dump?
Haven't you ever seen it before? Quite a realistic exhibit. Caveman life. But suddenly, the dummies come to life.
Yes, the cavemen start to move. We see one raising an axe as Doiby observes, Did you say realistical lantern? Yow! I think this is carrying things too far.
And so, while the phony Green Lanterns flee...
Yep, we see a couple more Green Lanterns throwing their arms up in the air in a panic, one yelling,
Help! Help! We had enough!
In the background, we see Doiby punching out one of the cavemen as he says, Poisonally, I had enough of this nonsense too. He then grabs hold of the tusks of a model mammoth, swings around, kicking out a couple more of the cavemen, saying, And I hope you'll enjoy this hot foot I'm swinging. Doiby looks to his right in the next panel, and we see a silhouetted form of Green Lantern, a little bit of a flame rippling around him, being approached by some cavemen as Doiby says, Hey Lantern, quit showing off and fight, will ya? I ain't had me supper yet.
But before the scarlet and emerald-clad gladiator can move, the battle abruptly ends.
Yep, the flame's still burning around Green Lantern. We notice that 2 of the gorillas from the previous exhibit are taking off their masks to show men underneath. The first one is saying,
No need for any more fighting, gentlemen. The test is finished.
Another one with slick back brown hair takes off his mask and says, And am I glad that Mr. Dickle's punch is like a mule's kick. The first man continues to remove his animal outfit, showing a grey suit underneath. He steps towards Green Lantern saying,
Relax, sir. We merely had to make sure we had the real Green Lantern, and your imperviousness to our attack proves that. So, relax.
We then see in the next panel that, well, it doesn't seem to be our Alan Scott. It's an older-looking chap, a bit shorter, who declares,
But I ain't Green Lantern. Something's holding me here like this.
And this prompts the 2 men who've revealed themselves in grey suits to exclaim,
What? From a shadowy corner of the room, the genuine Green Lantern steps forth.
Yep, our Al steps forward, flashing a beam from the ring in his left hand, saying,
Just my little trick, gentlemen. I let this imitation double for me in this final trial of yours to guard against treachery. Of course I had to protect him against harm.
Yes, with the green beam, obviously, from the ring, enveloping this fake Green Lantern, who takes his leave, saying,
If you all don't mind, I think I'll scram. So long.
And with him gone, the real GL says,
And now, gentlemen, I'd like to know what this is all about.
And one of the men in grey, balding chap with glasses and a bow tie, steps forward and says, Certainly. Please sit down, and I'll explain. You see him standing in front of some skeletons, and looks like dinosaur skeletons, actually, in the next panel, as Alan and Doiby pay attention, and he says, One of the greatest explorers of all time, Simon Gent, has been missing for 6 months. We know where he is, and we need you to help rescue him. You see, Green Lantern, it all began, and we slip into flashback mode, one black May night about a year ago. Simon Gent was exploring the mystic Druid Stonehenge on the drear moors of Sussex, and we see Simon, nondescript chap, wearing a green jacket and a little cap, with a very odd rendering of Stonehenge, if you ask me. Beautifully coloured, though, it must be said. We see rippling, radiating golden light all around it as Simon observes,
Great Scott! Lights in the Stonehenge! Impossible!
To Gent's amazement, a Druid ceremony, thought to have been extinct for 1500 years, was in progress, and in the flashback we see Simon moving forward to see what purports to be Druids, people standing about in robes, standing around one of the middle sections of Stonehenge, which is a large flat stone, and there's a girl in a red dress stretched out upon it, and it looks as though a couple of the Druids are holding knives. Oh my goodness. Gent observes,
This must be some stupid masquerade. But anyway, I've got to help that girl. They may have hurt her.
He steps forward, yelling,
Stop! Stop this at once, you idiots!
Hola! Look, says one of the druids, turning round. Simon steps forward, punching the nearest one out, saying,
The police will settle your hash when I'm finished with you, murderers!
One of the druids exclaims, This is a mad one. Cut him down! And they all brandish their very small swords, but they look very sharp and very pointy. Simon leaps up onto the dais where the girl is tied down, saying,
How much further are you killers going to carry this insane play acting? Are you all crazy?
And we see that the glow that Simon had seen earlier on was caused by what looks like just a floating stone that's hovering above this flat table, as it were. And the narration resumes, But as Gent unwittingly ran into the blazing druid stone, he was momentarily blinded. We see Simon with the stone very close to his face, shining right in his face, Simon stunned, his hat falling off, as the narration resumes, And when he recovered, moments later, he was alone with the murdered sacrifice. And we see Simon Gent leaning down over the body of the woman who was on the dais. We now see she's dressed in red. He's taking her pulse and he says,
I was too late. They've killed her, just as I feared.
Then, as Gent touched the chill, still figure, a miracle took place, and the woman sits up. Simon exclaims,
What? Alive? But that's impossible. Has this all been a trick?
No, sire. This was no trick. This was a druid ceremony. What you have seen has been taking place since Britain was first settled, but today we who are supposed to be extinct must be very secretive.
But you came back to life. Was that part of the ceremony?
No, sire. You brought life to me when you touched me. You must have been marked by the druid stone. The druid stone may not be touched by anyone, for it grants the king's touch. It has now been granted to you. We're back in the present day with Green Lantern and the explaining man as Green Lantern says,
Ah, yes, I've heard of that myth. It was thought once that a king could cure any disease merely with the touch of his hand. They still hold the ceremony in England today.
Ah, no, Green Lantern. The king's touch was no myth. As the girl explained to Gent, and we're back in flashback territory as the revived girl and Gent are moving away from Stonehenge, and she's saying, In the old days, the Druids granted the power to ancient kings of Britain, and now, for the first time in 1,000 years, a mortal has the king's touch again. She moves off, Gent calling after her,
Wait, where are you going?
And the explainer resumes. Before Gent's startled eyes, the Druid maiden vanished within the embrace of a giant Druid oak, and we then see her voice coming out from a knot in the heart of a tree trunk. My goodness, this is all very folk horror, isn't it, listeners?
Mm-hmm.
Her voice drifting out says, Back to our Druid hiding place. Though you have saved me this time, I shall not escape sacrifice. I shall surely be slain. Gent observes.
What? She's gone.
Back at the museum again, the explainer continues. Now, all this sounds fantastic, Green Lantern, but what the Druid girl said was true. Simon Gent had acquired the mystic king's touch. Time and again, Gent found that the mere touch of his hand could heal the sick, even raise the dead. And we get another flashback to a couple of bearded men observing as Simon stands in some kind of hospital morgue situation as a body on a table in front of him sits up, causing one of the observers to exclaim,
My word, that corpse has come to life.
And the other one says, It's unbelievable. It's a miracle. Our explainer resumes his narration. Hurriedly, Simon Gent embarked for America, and we see Simon standing at the railing of an ocean liner, and he's saying,
This gift shall be used for all humanity. From now on I shall devote my life to the ills of man, and sickness and death shall vanish from the earth.
But the news of his gifts had preceded him. We see a group of bad guys sat round a table underneath a very sharp overhead lamp, and a silhouetted form is saying,
Boys, we're the biggest crooks in America, and I've called you here to form a syndicate for the biggest racket ever invented. If we can get hold of this guy Gent, we can clean up by selling his cure to the public.
One of his colleagues replies, Right, the public will pay billions. Why, it's surefire. We will just sit back and let him beg to pay. The explainer resumes his narration. So, as Gent left ship in New York, he was kidnapped, and we see Gent being surrounded by shady-looking characters in overcoats and hats, one of them holding a pistol clearly, who says,
Reach, Mr. Gent.
Mr. Gent replies,
What?
And one of the other hoods says, You're coming with us, pal. You and us are going into big business. The health business. Cut back to Green Lantern and the explainer. Simon Gent is our friend, Green Lantern. We know where he's being held. For his sake and the sake of all humanity, we must rescue him. Will you help us?
Yes, I'll help you rescue Simon Gent.
Good. We start at once. There is a slow dissolve. A caption reads,
An hour later, at an abandoned country cemetery.
we see Green Lantern and Doiby and a few lads from the group from the museum who inexplicably have changed into white shirts and lederhosen and little hats.
It's standard explorer fare.
Well,
that's it.
Speak for yourself.
When I go exploring, I
Yes.
always adorn my lederhosen first.
Challenge extended. Next time you and Christine go somewhere freezing in the middle of... I want to see you, I want photographs of you in your lederhosen pointing at lost gloves. Yes, the abandoned cemetery. We can see it behind a tall gate-like fence. Many, many gravestones ranging about the side of a hill. We can see the silhouette of a building at the top of this hill. And one of the explorers, let's just call them that, points out, they're holding Kent and Errol Chapel atop the hill. To which Doiby says, golly, a graveyard. Spooky. One of the explorers steps forward, bearing a crowbar which he uses to try and prise the gate open, but there's a sudden flash, and Doiby remarks, look out! That iron fence is charged with electricity. And Green Lantern says,
No wonder you needed my help. All right, here goes. Swiftly, the power ring tears down the high-voltage barrier.
yes, big flash of green flame from Alan's ring and the gate starts to melt. Fantastic. Green Lantern says,
All right, gentlemen, let's go.
amazing! Exclaims one of the explorers.
But as the rescuers creep up the gloomy hillside...
Yes, out of the darkness, from nowhere, some fighting felines leap out of them. One of the explorers remarks and points out for us all who are not reading along, look, hunting cheetahs. To which Doiby says, jeepers! Damn croc sure done spare no expense guarding that Gent character. Doiby leaps into action in the next panel, kicking one of the gravestones over so that it lands on top of the cheetah. That's not very nice. Doiby says, kindly restrain your impetuousness, pal. It's too late for supper. And we see a whine from the cheetah. I wonder if they were real cheetahs. Green Lantern busts into action, flashing a couple of beams of green light which pick up a couple of cheetahs off the ground and says,
Can't waste time fighting these critters, Doiby. The oak chapel's right up ahead. Let's go. But as they near the towering chapel pinnacle...
yes, we see Green Lantern and Doiby and the few explorers reaching the chapel, and it's a large building. It seems to be lit up at this point, and a voice booms out of the air, saying,
Stop! This is the last warning. Leave or you die.
Doiby exclaims, listen to that! What now?
And a heavy barrage of machine gun bullets pours out.
Gosh, Green Lantern, again, quick to action, says,
Ignore the bullets, gentlemen. The power ring will shield you.
yes, we see the rat-a-tat of bullets firing out of a window in the chapel, but GL fires a green flame shield which protects the explorers, causing one of the explorers to say, careful, don't let that light touch our packs. We've got dynamite with us.
There's no need to dynamite a hole in the wall. The ring can take care of that too.
And indeed, we see the green flame burning a hole in the side of the building as one of the explorers then asks, But how do we get over the moat? Gosh, they're so negative, these explorers. You're with Green Lantern. Green Lantern, who very helpfully then says,
Like this. Simple. Now follow me.
and GL again gestures. The three little stretches of green flame burn out over the moat. And GL and Doiby and the explorers walk over them into the building as Doiby says, Come on, gents. The citadel is fell.
Inside the chapel.
Green Lantern, Doiby, and a couple of the explorers walk in. Green Lantern saying,
We're here at last.
and we see a young woman in a sort of plain yellowy orange dress. And Doiby addresses her saying, Hey, sister, where's the Gent gent?
Suddenly, the rescuers attack Green Lantern and Doiby Dickles.
Oh no! One of the explorers brings a pistol down heavily on the back of Doiby's head, saying,
I'll answer that question for you, Dickles.
Hey, oh! But then we see one of the other ones striking Green Lantern in the back of the head too. And as GL goes down, he exclaims, The girl screams at this point, Let me go! Let me go! We can see her being held by a couple of what we thought were the rescuers, the explorers. And Doiby, down on the ground next to GL, is saying, Lantern, how cold! But how could that be when they didn't hit him with wood? Then Alan, with one eye open, says,
Psst, shut up.
And we see in the background, a couple of the explorers, who we thought were the good guys, have produced a couple of lengths of rope, and one of them is saying, Get her over here, and we'll tie up the lot.
Swiftly, the bound trio is surrounded with sticks of heavy TNT, and...
Oh my goodness, what a narrative leap. Yes, we see that Green Lantern and Doiby and the girl are all tied round the ankles and the arms. And the bad guys, I'm still surprised at this revelation, still in their lederhosen and little hats, have half a dozen sets of dynamite, all linked together, arranged in a circle around Green Lantern, Doiby and the poor unfortunate lady. Head bad guy then says,
Hurry up, Light the fuse.
We see one guy, who we thought was one of our pals, reaching forward with a match and lighting the fuse as they all take their leave, with one of them saying,
Okay, they blow sky high in less than a minute. Let's get out of here, fast. And as the rescuers quickly vanish...
Lantern, what is all this? Will somebody please explain? Where's Simon Gent?
Oh, pipe down. There isn't any Simon Gent. Don't tell me you believed that phony story they told. This was just a ruse to trick me into helping them get at this girl. She's May Leeds, the state's star witness in the coming trial of the Krupp Syndicate. Those explorers are the Krupp Syndicate. Without her, the state couldn't hope to convict them. That's why those crooks went to such extremes trying to get at her. We're to be framed for her death, then we'll be killed.
The young woman says at this point, That's true. Every word. That's why I took such pains to hide out here. And Doiby, looking as stunned and confused and puzzled as I am right now, yells, So what? So what? Do something. We're gonna blow up in a minute and all you do is talk.
A flash of the power ring, and all bonds are severed.
Great shot as Alan, with his hands tied behind his back, manages to fire the requisite power beams to untie everyone's bonds, as he says,
Oh, don't be silly, Doiby. I destroyed all the explosive in that TNT an hour ago. That's nothing but the sawdust packing there.
Freed from their bonds, our three heroes stand up and Green Lantern says,
Now I've got to provide a phony explosion to trick those crooks into revealing their hideout, and the records that will convict them. Hundreds of feet upwards shoots a broad beam of power, sucking in a giant column of air.
Yes, we don't really see that, unfortunately. We just see the silhouette forms of May, GL and Doiby inside the building still, as Green Lantern then says,
And when we've done that, you won't have to hide out here anymore, Miss Leeds, because your evidence won't be needed.
How's that shaft of light gonna make an explosion?
The answer to Doiby's query comes as tons of atmosphere rush into the green flaring vacuum with a titanic roar.
Yes, we see the explorers looking very shifty, making away, but not even looking back as the temple collapses with a massive crash and a burst of green flame. The explorers then climb back into their car, with one of them saying,
Well, that's that. May Leeds is dead, and so is the government's case against us. And no more Green Lantern to bother us either.
Yes. Now let's get back to the hideout. The greatest crook syndicate of all time is back in business again, says one of the others as they climb back into the car.
Unwittingly, the crime syndicate leads its trackers to its hideout.
Yes, because we see the car pulling up outside a building with Green Lantern and Doiby hovering in the air above them.
There they go, just as I figured, straight to their hideout.
Pretty smart using that cute colonial blockhouse for a hideout.
They won't be using it long,
says GL as he and Doiby descend to the ground, and GL quickly punches out a couple of the rescuers or the explorers, whatever you want to call them. One of them yells, Yeah! Another one exclaims, Green Lantern! Final panel of this page, we're inside the building. Green Lantern and Doiby punching out some more of the bad guys. We can see various guns and bows and arrows and other weapons displayed on the wall around them. And as GL and Doiby get stuck in, Doiby says, "You guys killed the Lantern, remember? We are only imitations."
No, I recall that face and it's no imitation. Yeah!
A nice concussive burst of force there as Doiby punches out that guy. You see Green Lantern gesturing as he says,
Oops, so sorry, I seem to have dropped something.
And a whole mess of saucepans and headdresses and bows and arrows and jars fall on the head of one poor unfortunate who yells,
Oh!
The next panel is amazing. Doiby's had time to put on the headdress and fetch an arrow and a bow, and he yells, Wahoo! I'm an Indian chief! How do you guys like it? And he fires an arrow into one of the bad guys' backside with a twang, prompting the guy to yell, Urgh! Which is what you do when you get an arrow fired into your bum.
Sparked by the power ring, the ancient colonial relics blast out in a frightening cannonade.
Yes, with lots of bangs and booms and pops and bams and blams and bangs. The weapons all start firing, making the explorers, or the syndicate, whatever we want to call them now, start to cower, and one of them exclaims,
Yeah! They've got the artillery working with them!
In the next panel, GL strikes three of them with simultaneous beams of green flame, saying,
And now for a little modern ballistics.
And they all exclaim, There's a slow dissolve.
And?
Yes, we see the bad guys lying on the ground, and we see GL and Doiby crossing to a bank of drawers, a bank of filing drawers, which they pull open as GL says,
There they are. All the records of the biggest crime syndicate in the country. Enough to convict these thugs forever. This is what I was after when I played dumb.
But how'd you know that story was hogwash, Lantern? It could have been true.
Sure. Only Alan Scott happens to be president of the Gotham Explorers Club. He told me it was phony.
A small caption reads,
Comes the dawn.
And a very thoughtful Doiby rubs his chin and says, Oh, I see. Alan Scott told you that. Hey, wait! Yours is Alan Scott Lantern. You mean you told yourself? I get it. Or do I? Ain't life a scream? A small caption reads,
The end.
So yes, listeners, Peter chose that one because it featured several ersatz Green Lanterns.
Yes.
It's actually quite a good one, I think, because it demonstrates the friendship and the relationship and the dynamic between Alan and Doiby very well.
It certainly does, yes.
They will pop up again together at some point in the future on the show, I'm sure. That was very interesting. Mm-hmm. A lot less painful in the acting than in the reading, in the preparation, I felt.
Yeah, it's not the easiest story to read. The panels are very small and dense.
I noticed quite a few shots of GL in silhouette or in close-up as if Marty didn't like drawing the front of the costume. And one thing we both noticed in the reading was when Green Lantern uttered his oath. There was one very significant difference, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm. Well, his original oath was and I shall shed my light over dark evil. But a lot of people think that that's the only oath he had in the Golden Age, but he didn't. He did use the in brightest day oath. However, there seem to be variations of it. There's in brightest day and blackest night, which is what we all know, hence the big maxi series Blackest Night. But in this, he says, in brightest day and darkest nights.
Which to me makes more sense. Yeah, I remember a feature in an issue of Alter Ego or one of the All-Star Companions. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was, but they went into detail on all the various different oaths that Alan used, and it was more than just those two. There was at least another two or three, a couple of really simple one-line ones, and then a couple of one-offs that were kind of weird. If I can track it down, listeners, we'll post it in the socials. If not, by the end of the year review episode, I will have found it and we'll mention it then. And someone remind me. A very interesting story. Like the fact that so much of the narrative is taken up with that bluff about the Stonehenge thing.
Yes.
Because I was fully invested and was thinking, right, when's Simon Gent going to turn up? Is he going to be okay? Have they killed him or something? And then it turns out that all of that was just nonsense, and GL knew all along it was nonsense.
Literally, on my first read of this, I thought, Simon Gent, he's an interesting... I mean, you should do something with that.
Yeah.
You know, he could be a character in his own right, doing that, and obviously the whole thing's a big bluff, so it's like, oh, right, so he didn't even exist.
Yeah, it was fascinating. It's an almost Stephen Moffat style bluff, sort of like, misdirections.
Very much so, yes.
I must admit, I found it a little unsatisfying that Alan knew what had been going on all along, but Doiby's reaction is what makes it worthwhile, I think, is what makes it work.
We were Doiby in this story. We were going along with it.
We absolutely were.
I think perhaps the explorers actually being the mob explains the lederhosen, because the mob would obviously think the explorers wear explorer-like outfits and they think lederhosen is the way to go. Yes,
that probably does explain that. It's very interesting to contemplate also that there were so many full-time, proper, really into it, kitted up with electric power rings, Green Lantern cosplayers at this point in 1944, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Was there a stall selling these power... I mean, the fake power rings are brilliant because they're on their hands, there is a glow coming from them, but you can see a wire running from it up the sleeve.
Yes.
You can totally see this in an advert in like a 60s comic.
Yes. The next thing I want to sort of say is, obviously Peter picked this one because one of the fun things we like to do with Legacy on our show is, these stories we've done a few of them now. Mm-hmm. Steve and I are about to do another one. Spoilers. Where heroes are sort of impersonated by someone claiming to be them. So as we've said in the past, we've done Human Bomb and Manhunter stories. Mm-hmm. So we have this one where we see that there are several other people dressed up as Green Lantern. Now, do we see exactly how many there are?
No, it's kind of a bundle. Mm-hmm.
At least 3 or 4 that are clearly identified. But going by the first panel on page 3, it looks as if there's about 10 or 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Which means that Hal Jordan was the 13th Green Lantern, 14th Green Lantern, 15th Green Lantern. So, Ron Mars, if you're listening, you've always been my favourite Green Lantern writer. If you're listening, why don't you do a series about all of these different guys that were Green Lantern, doing their lives and some of the stuff that happened to them. In fact, do you know what? Let's just write it ourselves, Peter. The ideas are spilling into my head. We need a 12-issue maxi series about each of these GLs that all culminates with them turning up at this museum at the end.
All hero worshipping Alan.
Yep.
The Golden Age Green Lantern Corps.
Yes. Yes, that's what this is.
It is.
It's the Golden Age Green Lantern Corps of Earth 2. I have not seen anything about that anywhere else. We are claiming that idea. There we go.
It's patented and trademarked and copyrighted, just like all of Green Lantern's.
Yes, that is an astonishingly good way of putting it. I have nothing further to add. It was a fun story, a little bit long-winded.
With a bonus mention of favourites, Wonder Woman, and of course, the Crime Syndicate.
Yes.
Was mentioned a couple of
Yes,
times.
there was mention of a crime syndicate.
For all your multiversal needs.
Yes, that was... I like doing my Doiby Dickles voice as well. It's not too far away from the voice I did for The Crow, but yeah, that was interesting. And I think, listeners, if you're able to tolerate or indulge us still further, we're now going to cross to Steve and I as we deal with the next member of the JSA to be sat around the meeting table on the cover of All-Star Comics number 3. Welcome back to the Earth 2 podcast, Steve Higgins.
Thank you for having me back again.
Yep, it's only... I mean, Steve was here last week. It hasn't been a long time, but, it's always a pleasure. Steve and I are now going to bring you the Hour-Man adjacent stroke themed story for our JSAPRIL coverage. Peter found this one, and it revisits a trope which we've met a couple of times on the show. I won't spell out the details because it'll spoil it when we get to it, but suffice it to say, we're reading the Hour-Man story from issue 52 of Adventure Comics, which was published on the 6th of June 1940. So that's just a few weeks before the birth of Ringo Starr of the Beatles. So there you go. I always like to mention a Beatle birthday when I can. Steve will now tell us about the cover to Adventure Comics issue 52.
I certainly will. The cover has the Adventure Comics banner up at the top, number 52. Up in the upper left-hand corner, we have a little circle that's got the Sandman, Wesley Dodds, in it. 10 cents, July. And we've got an image of Rex Tyler Hour-Man coming down from out of the sky to collide with two thugs down at the bottom of the page. One's wearing a fedora, the other's wearing a pinstripe suit. And they have clearly just tried to rob or have been successful in robbing. And Hour-Man's going to get the money back and return it to its rightful owners. But the big top of a circus, and you see in the background the circus cashier. The thug wearing a fedora is brandishing a pistol, but Rex is bringing his left leg to kick that arm, and so he cannot take a shot at Rex. Great, great image there.
Awesome. Listeners, in the best tradition of the Earth 2 podcast, you will be, no doubt, astonished to learn that this sequence does not feature in the story we're about to read. This is the 5th published story of Hour-Man in Adventure Comics. Just to give you a bit of context, listeners. So it's very early in Rex's career. It's fair to say, Hour-Man is one of my favourite superheroes. And sort of at a formative point in my life, my early 20s, and I was very confused and not at my best. I found him to be very inspirational. There's a particular issue of All-Star Squadron, which I've mentioned in the past. And there was some really good stuff done with him in the 90s. He was a recurring kind of supporting, even after he was killed off, he was a strong recurring supporting character in series like Starman and Starman Mystery Theatre and such like. And I always found him very inspirational. That sort of sense of finding the strength that really lies within and enduring and all that sort of stuff. He's a real favourite of mine. Steve, can you remember the first time you encountered Hour-Man?
Well, I do believe that it was that aforementioned All-Star Squadron issue in which he fights Baron Blitzkrieg, and you've talked many times in the past, but it is an image burned into my brain of him breaking the chains and screaming when Red Bee is attacked by Baron Blitzkrieg. And I don't know if I had come across Rex in previous JLA, JSA crossovers. Mm-hmm. The one that I have the strongest memory of is in the 190s with the Secret Society of Supervillains.
Of course.
Was he in that one?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
I think that's one of Peter's favourites. Is that 3-parter Ultra Humanite rocks up? I think that's the one that the Signal Man's in and stuff. Yeah, it's a good one. A couple of years in our future, obviously, listeners, but we'll get to it before too long.
And so I obviously read him in that, but I don't think he made as an indelible impression as he did in that All-Star Squadron issue.
We're still a couple of years away from starting our coverage of All-Star Squadron, but I think there's some brilliant stuff done with that. And obviously the drug addiction type situation, from Miracle is the source of his powers and stuff like that. And it's one of the areas I think where Roy's sort of decision to sort of slavishly follow DC continuity worked, I think, to the benefit of the book, because Hour-Man had dropped out of the Justice Society quite early on. He's featured and last as long as a lot of other heroes, and Roy kind of did that retcon sort of suggestion it was because he gave character reasons for it, that the addiction was too strong. He stopped being a superhero to sort of work on it and stuff. And it's a part of his character, I think, that Roy sort of really originated that addict sort of thing, and it's kind of stayed with him since. There was stuff in the Tom Pyre series and the Justice Society Returns that sort of dealt with it. I am sure, listeners, that I will talk at length about Hour-Man again very soon. Maybe not on this show. I've recently talked about him at length on Opal City Confidential, but I'm sure I will talk about him again before too long. So without any further ado, on all that preamble, we will jump into the story. Our opening splash image, presenting
Tick-Tock Tyler, the Man of the Hour, as The Hour-Man by Bernard Bailey.
And there's a shot of Hour-Man, looking as though he's bursting through a door. We can see a hole in the plaster on the wall behind him, so maybe, is there an inference that he's maybe shot the door open? I don't think so. But he's standing brandishing a pistol, uncharacteristically, and emerging from the pistol is a nice huge sort of flame, which very handily is also a massive introductory caption.
His real identity, that of a meek and mild chemist, still a mystery to everyone but himself. Rex Tyler, the famed Hour-Man, continues his campaign against crime and criminals, helping the oppressed and, whenever possible, aiding the police. None, of course, know that the Hour-Man's remarkable strength and agility are the result of his discovery of Miraclo, which for 1 hour, only 60 minutes, makes him a man above men, not superhuman, but extra-human.
Awesome. Great shot of Hour-Man there. But Bernard Bailey, it's weird. I think some of his work in the Golden Age is great. Spectre stuff's amazing, but this is not the best, I'll say that much. Anyway, so we kick into the story properly. An establishing caption reads,
In a laboratory.
Yeah, we see a laboratory. We can tell it's a laboratory because there's some equipment on a desktop or a bench top. And we see Rex Tyler wearing a white lab coat in conversation with someone who's presumably his boss, who's an older man in glasses, brown suit, and a younger looking chap in a green checked suit. Well, it appears to be checked in later panels, but it looks just to be green in this one. Rex's boss is making an introduction, gestures towards the man in the green suit and says, "This is Bob Wallace, Tyler. He's going to help you."
I don't like to impose, sir, but...
"Oh, for heaven's sake, Tyler, stop being so meek. You can't help it if we get more work than you can handle." And at this, Bob Wallace, the new arrival, looks a little surprised because Rex can only stammer,
I... Disgusted with Tyler's meekness, the boss leaves.
Rex at this point rendered with slick back dark hair, and Bob Wallace also has very smart dark hair. They're kind of quite hard to tell apart, to be honest. Rex is saying,
Ever done this kind of work before? On munitions, I mean?
"Oh, yes. I've worked in 3 other labs in this city." And there's a slow dissolve.
A week later...
Rex is in his boss's office. Boss sat behind a big desk, which is empty apart from a telephone, so he can't be terribly busy at the moment. Boss is saying, "Maybe that new man isn't as thorough as you, but he's getting out more work."
I can't understand it, unless it's because he's been working almost every night.
And then we have another slow dissolve and another caption.
Next morning...
Rex is looking into a microscope by the looks of things. Standing behind him is Bob Wallace with a newspaper open, and Bob has been reading it, and he highlights a very interesting story when he says, "Look at this. The Hour-Man held up a bank last night and almost shot a watchman."
The Hour-Man? Here, let me see that.
Rex gets a very thoughtful close-up in the next panel as he strokes his chin and says to himself,
The watchman says he saw his face. I wonder.
There's a slow dissolve, and the first of a few narrative leaps.
That evening...
And we see who's obviously the watchman because there's a telephone in his desk and he's got a brush. Hour-Man is standing in front of him. The watchman is obviously disturbed at Hour-Man's presence because he's sort of trying to wave him away and he's saying, "Go away! Go away!" And Hour-Man seems to be throwing something into his face. It looks like there's little puffs of orange or yellow sort of smoke surrounding him. And Hour-Man says,
A small dose of this will relieve you of your fear of me.
The caption for the next panel then reads,
Later.
The watchman, now obviously relaxed, is chatting away enthusiastically to Hour-Man. He's saying, "Yes, the suit was the same as yours, but you don't look like the fellow who took a shot at me. His eyes were sorta glassy." And arms folded and thoughtfully, Hour-Man says,
Glassy. I don't see... Wait! Hypnosis! Leaving the watchman, Tick-Tock returns to the laboratory.
And we see him operating what looks like a radio or something, but there's also some nice, casually strewn about scientific equipment. There's a test tube and a burner of some description. And Hour-Man is obviously fiddling with the knobs on this device, and he's saying to himself,
I can't figure it out.
Oh, that's what it is. He's just switching on the radio, because in the next panel, we get a news bulletin, which reads, Flash! We interrupt this program to bring you news of a daring hold-up less than 10 minutes ago. The Hour-Man, using tear gas, held up and robbed the Palace Theatre. Police have asked all citizens to be on the lookout for this desperate criminal. And Hour-Man looks quite appalled at this, and he says to himself,
So I'm a desperate criminal, am I? Well, I'll...
We then have another incredibly difficult to figure out little panel. A caption reads,
Just then...
And we see a man in a green suit with a green hat, apparently with a key in his hand, about to open the door to Rex's laboratory. There's a caption for the first panel of page 3.
From his hiding place, the Hour-Man watches.
And it looks as though Hour-Man is hiding behind a curtain. Still in full costume, obviously. And from behind his curtain, he observes...
Why, it's Wallace. Gosh, he's fainted.
Which happens off camera to save Bernard Bailey drawing it.
Hastily, the Hour-Man takes off his costume and starts changing into his street clothes.
Yes, it's a taps-off Rex Tyler, getting changed, taking off his uniform, and he's saying,
This Miraclo is still strong, but I can't let Wallace see me in this outfit.
and so?
His costume changed. Tyler goes to Wallace's aid.
Yes, we see Wallace sat in a big red chair, obviously coming to his senses with Rex Tyler in his civvy standing over him. And as he wakes up, Wallace says, Tyler, what are you doing here?
I might ask you the same question.
Wallace is obviously feeling well enough to stand. He does and replies, I was walking along the street and I felt faint. I got here just in time. And in Hands on His Hips, Rex replies,
I'm glad I could help. Want to see a doctor?
No, doctor! He'll kill me! He'll kill me! Wallace looks terrified. Rex steps forward to reassure him, saying,
Get a grip on yourself, man. Maybe I can...
No! Go away! Exclaims Wallace as he backs off. And there's another narrative leap here. You have to fill in quite a lot of the gaps in this story. It's very frustrating. What I think that seems to have happened is Wallace has rushed off in a panic, and the caption for the next panel reads,
As Tyler leaves...
Rex is obviously leaving the laboratory, and he bends down because he's noticed something in the floor.
A bill wrapper? From the Metropolis Theatre?
What's a bill wrapper?
That's a great question.
I thought you might know. Bill Rapper, of course, was a singer who supported the Montrose Avenue when they played the Portsmouth Wedgwood Rooms in 1998. There's another slow dissolve. A caption reads,
Next morning...
And we see Rex has obviously visited his local police station. He's saying to the officer at the desk,
I can't understand this letter. It says that unless I keep my mouth shut, I'll be murdered by the Hour-Man. I demand protection.
The policeman says in reply, It's probably some practical joke. However...
Suddenly, a terrific blast rocks the building.
Yeah, Rex yells,
Good heavens!
Yeah, and there's clearly a massive explosion taking place. Huge clouds of pink dust blowing up, and the explosion is of such force that it's blown the hat off the police officer. Panel 2 of page 4. Listeners, it's very messy. We thought if I was reading this that it was Rex, but we think it's one of the other police officers standing in the doorway of the office of his senior officer. We can see the door has been blown off, the glass in the door is shattered. This officer is standing in the doorway with something in his hand, and he's saying, Are you all right, Chief? Somebody bombed the building and we found this. An hourglass. That settles it. We'll get this Hour-Man if it takes every man on the force. And standing behind them is Rex Tyler, looking at the hourglass, because we see Rex looking very perplexed and a massive question mark speech bubble hovers over his head. So we're now going to get Steve to vocalise that question mark. There we go. That'll do. Cameo from Scooby-Doo there. This is obviously, Rex has had this letter. He's gone to the police station. The police station's been blown up. They found this hourglass on the site, and this senior officer thinks that this means Hour-Man is responsible for the bomb. Have you got that? Does that make sense?
I believe so. That makes sense to me.
There is a slow dissolve.
Later, at Tyler's home, he has just finished taking a Miraclo pill.
Yep. And we also see Rex is getting dressed into his Hour-Man uniform. As he's doing so, he says,
Now to clear the Hour-Man's name. He's being blamed for things he didn't do.
And then,
as TikTok steps out of his apartment,
yes, we see Hour-Man in full costume opening the door of his apartment and not taking a great deal of care here to remain incognito. There's a car parked outside and a man in a green suit is rushing towards it. Hour-Man remarks,
Why, that's Wallace. I wonder what he's doing around here.
And the car takes off and Hour-Man runs after it, saying,
This certainly is not the way to the laboratory.
Brilliant. Hour of power, ladies and gentlemen. He's able to run after a car. Right, there's another bit of a narrative leap, because we see the car parked outside a large house in the country, and Hour-Man standing on a cliff top looking down at the house. You can see a large tree goes beside the house. Pay attention, because that's going to be important in a moment. He takes this location in, and Hour-Man says to himself,
So this is where he lives. The Hour-Man moves in closer.
Yes, and we see that Rex, or Hour-Man, has climbed the tree and is sitting in a large branch, trying to look into the window of the house. It looks as though, from inside the house, a voice can be heard saying, What the? No, it can't be. Equally, because it's not very clear, it might be Hour-Man, who has sat in the branch and seen something through the window and realised something, and he says,
What the? No, it can't be.
Listeners, if you've got your copy of the JSA All-Stars Archive Volume 1 handy, you can read along with Steve and I, and you can see just how impenetrable this actually is. Bernard Bailey phoning it in to a huge extent. The first panel then of page 5 makes me think the person who was exclaiming was someone inside the house. Because a caption for the first panel of page 5 reads,
Discovered!
Our man is now standing in the branch of the tree and a man in a brown suit is running towards him. It's not clear where the man in the brown suit has come from, but the man in the brown suit is saying, All right, Birdman, come on down before I drill you full of holes. And our man says,
I'll be right with you.
The caption for panel 2 of page 5.
Not expecting the Hour-Man to jump, the thug is caught off his guard.
Yep, our man plummets to the ground, colliding with the goon with force.
A short struggle, and the thug is subdued.
Well, that's all right then.
Suddenly the door opens, and...
Yes, the door opens, and our man is astonished to see another man dressed as our man emerging. Our man exclaims,
Well, more company. My twin!
And the new arrival says, What? What?
During the fight which ensues, the Hour-Man rips the mask from the imposter's face.
Yes, great shot actually, this one, of our man reaching forward with his left hand and pulling the mask from the other guy to reveal...
Why, it's Wallace!
Wallace is sat on the ground, looking the worse for wear, in a very, very good Our Man cosplay, as our man stands over him and says,
Who's behind all this, Wallace? And don't...
But he's interrupted by a caption which reads,
Suddenly...
And appearing out of the doorway is a thin-faced man with short curly brown hair, wearing a brown suit and a yellow tie, a very, very neat moustache, round glasses, and bearing a pistol. And he says, I'll answer that. Our man whirls and exclaims,
Dr. Sneg!
Dr. Sneg, for it is he, gets a close-up and he says, Yes, Dr. Sneg, you thought you finished me, but I knew I'd get you with a decoy. I hypnotized Wallace and had him do my bidding, and now I'll kill you!
As the doctor fires, the Hour-Man sidesteps.
Yeah, Dr. Sneg fires his pistol at our man, but our man, drawn gracefully here like a ballerina, paradoos to the right, saying,
Your aim is poor, my friend. Unsuccessful in his attempt to kill the Hour-Man, he races back into the house.
Yes, a great shot here of his feet vanishing into the open doorway, as our man says,
Don't run away, Doctor. You won't escape this time.
And our man gives chase. He follows.
But as TikTok tries to enter the house,
there is a massive explosion and a colossal boom sound effect. Good grief. You see our man getting to his feet, Wallace standing in front of him, Wallace saying, Sneg went to blow up the mayor's house. You'll have to stop him.
I will, Wallace. I will.
Caption for the next panel.
As swift as the wind itself, the Hour-Man reaches the mayor's house.
Rex has obviously burst in, and we see the mayor. He's the third man in 2 pages to be wearing a brown suit. Sat behind a large desk, he says, You, the Hour-Man? What's the meaning of this?
There's no time to lose. Get out of the house. There's a time bomb planted here.
Gasp.
A moment later, the house blows up.
Our man has managed to get the mayor to safety. See them standing, and there's a few puffs and clouds of smoke around them. The mayor says, You saved my life. Hey, where are you going?
There's Dr. Sneg.
As our man starts to run off.
Seeing the Hour-Man coming after him, the doctor starts the car. But TikTok catches up to him and releases tear gas from his ring into Sneg's face.
That caption does a lot of heavy lifting because all we really see is our man running beside the car. I have to take Bernard's word for it.
The car runs wild and...
there's a massive crash! As the car collides with what looks like an enormous poo. Or maybe it's a rock, or maybe it's a mountainside or something, but it doesn't fare from this very well. It's a huge crash, it blows up, we see a wheel flying in one direction, the glass breaking, and the car just crunched. And there's a slow dissolve, and a caption reads,
Later.
And we see Rex sitting in his Hour-Man costume with his hood and cowl down, and he's holding a piece of paper in his hand, and he's saying,
When the mayor gets this letter explaining about Sneg and his use of Wallace, maybe they'll believe that I fight crime, not make it.
Wow. A caption rounds things out, saying,
The Hour-Man has a terrific surprise in store for you. Don't miss the next issue.
And it's signed off by Bernard Bailey. And well, listeners, that's it. And I have to say, quite honestly, I think that's the worst story that's been covered on the Earth 2 podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there. This is indecipherable at times.
The last page is just horribly rushed. The last couple of pages are horribly rushed. We take it that the man who rushes out to fight Rex is someone in the employ of Dr. Sneg. We guess that there must have been some booby trap set up by Dr. Sneg for the boom in panel 3 of the last page, to try and stop our man chasing him into the house.
Yeah, blowing up Wallace's house, I guess.
Yeah, poor Wallace. And then the very hurried way that, the chase after the car. And does Dr. Sneg die in the car crash? It's not very clear. Was he still in the car? Rex essentially kills him, if that's the case, because he unleashes tear gas in his face, which means that he can't drive, and then he drives into what looks like an enormous half of a coconut shell. I messaged Steve, and I said, oh, by the way, the Hour-Man story is terrible. And you said...
Oh, thank God. Because I know you love Hour-Man so much, and I was afraid that you liked this story, and I would have to be kind in how I spoke about it. But no, this...
Always be honest.
This is dreadful.
Yeah.
And, the thing that really kind of grabs me is with the art, it seems like he forgets that they're outside in some of these panels. Like, it looks like there's a wall behind Hour-Man in some of these panels that are like, that's supposed to be the outdoors.
Yes.
In particular, the one where Dr. Sneg is suddenly revealed to be standing there.
Yeah.
He's missing an arm. Is that part of his character?
Well, the mystery of Dr. Sneg. This is only the 5th Hour-Man story to be published in Adventure Comics.
Okay.
It's obviously very early in his career. So I had to look back at the other stories in the JSA All-Stars archives, and there's no one called Dr. Sneg.
Okay.
Because Rex always seems to recognise him and knows him by name. The previous story features a character who superficially looks a little bit like Dr. Sneg, I suppose, in that he's got a pointed nose and a moustache and wears glasses, but his hair is black as opposed to brown, and he seems to animate wax museum dummies.
Oh.
And there's the talk about Wallace being hypnotised. If you look Dr. Sneg up on DC Fandom Wiki,
okay,
right, it asserts that the bad guy who Hour-Man encounters in the story Steve and I have just read is the same bad guy that's in the previous issue, of Adventure, issue 51, and he's the same guy that's doing all the stuff with the animated wax figures. It's a fun story. If Peter ever decides to do an episode about wax figures, we might do this one. we could have done it after that Spectre story last year, actually.
Oh, yeah.
As I was saying, DC Fandom Wiki asserts that they're the same character, but reading the two stories together back to back, I don't know. I mean, it seems at one point in issue 51, this guy's, when he's just animated a couple of dummies, he says to them, I am the master, I created you and I can destroy you. And one of them replies, we understand, we will do your bidding. So to me, this suggests that this guy's called the master.
Delgado or Ainley?
It's very messy. The glasses on a little chain, and the guy who rocks up at the end of the story we've just read, who clearly appears in 3 panels. It's not Bernard Bailey's greatest work, put it that way. Whoever it was that eventually decided that the character in these 2 successive issues of Adventure Comics that's annoying Hour-Man was the same guy, I'm not sure who that was or when they did it. If someone knows this or can find out, please get in touch and let us know. It's an interesting one as an Hour-Man story because we see Rex being meek and mild and then a bit more confident after. That stuff is all present. We've got him being timid in front of his boss, and he wants to do the right thing. He wants to help Wallace. When he interviews the Night Watchman, it's suggested that Wallace has been hypnotised, so I suppose it's Dr. Sneg who hypnotised Wallace and provided him with the Hour-Man costume and encouraged him to go round blowing up police stations and holding up the Palace Theatre. That was it. The Palace Theatre gets robbed on page 2. So we presume that was Wallace in disguise as well. I must say the Palace Theatre is the name of the theatre in London where I saw Jason Donovan in The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, back in 2010. I'm just dropping that in there because Alison and I went to see Jason Donovan in concert on Monday. Any other thoughts then, Steve, before we release you from your duties?
Well, you just saying that about the Palace Theatre being robbed. Then on the next page, they find the bill wrapper from the Metropolis Theatre.
Oh, yeah.
Was that supposed to be the Palace Theatre? And it was a clue? And between pages 2 and 3, he got the name of the theatre wrong?
Yeah. Was this then going to end up in theatre land for the last couple of pages? Was that? You can always sort of imagine that's the way it's going to go, isn't it?
Yeah.
God. Listeners, it's baffling. Bernard Bailey's early Spectre stuff is astonishing. It really is. It's so much better than this. I mean, as I said, reprinting the JSA All-Stars archives, if you have a copy, grab it and have a look and see for yourselves. It really is just... We've done a fair few Golden Age stories now on the show, and to be honest, they're often quite good and quite charming, but I find it very difficult to say anything positive about this one.
It really does make me wish that we could speak to them and ask them, so what was the deal? How much of a rush job was this?
Yeah.
Because you look at all the backgrounds and how many of the backgrounds are just blank. And, was this an issue of some other story fell through and at the last minute, Bernard Bailey was told, write an Hour-Man story. You got a week. And he's like, a week? Okay. And this is what he came up with.
I think you're being too generous there. I think this is probably, I mean, if you'd bought the collection of All-Star Comics, you'd have seen that amongst some brilliant stuff in those early stories, there is some absolutely oof. I think you're right. This is very primitive. This was one of the earliest stories we've done on the show, published in June 1940. My dad hasn't even been born yet, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Granny Steele is still expecting, as we say in this part of the country, or we used to say in this part of the country. I think the word for it is primitive. You know, Steve nods sagely for the benefit of our YouTube viewers.
No, sorry. I was thinking about June 1940 and realizing that my grandparents weren't even married at this point. So,
listeners, what were your grandparents doing in 1940? Pete will tell you where to write later on. Yeah, it's an interesting one, but the thing we must talk about, the reason that Peter chose it and selected it for us to do is because it revisits that trope of the Golden Age superhero encountering someone else who's dressed up as him and is dropping his name in the mud. We've had that already with the Manhunter and with the Human Bomb. There might even been a couple of others I can't remember at this late stage.
Yeah.
We have already obviously had that Green Lantern story that Pete and I done already, which is another sort of similar twist on that, other people dressed up as the character. It also shows him, if you take Bob Wallace as canon, that means that Rick Tyler would be the third Hour-Man. Hour-Man 3, Rick Tyler. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, all of you hardcore DC continuity reconcilers. Yeah, that's the main reason we did it. It lets us do an Hour-Man story for this list, and it once again highlights the interesting legacy in the Golden Age when heroes would meet other... I think we did a Robot Man story at one point as well, didn't we? I could be misremembering. Listeners, we've done over 250 of these now. We've been working on it since 2019. Give us a break. Stop shouting at your mobile device. But it's a fun trope, and it's nice to visit it. And it's been very nice having Steve back to join me for this one.
Yes, and thank you very much. I'm honored that you allowed me to voice one of your favorite characters.
Matey.
As much as it was an incomprehensible story, it was a fun time voicing it with you. So
it really was.
Thank you.
So thank you. Thanks again. Listeners, that's a golden wrap for Steve Higgins on JSAPRIL. So thanks for helping us with this Hour-Man story, and with Jimmy Olsen last week alongside Brandon. Stellar work from you both. And Steve will no doubt be back with us on another episode before you know it. Back over then to me and Peter.
Thank you, Steve, for helping us out in our hour of need.
Yes, the man of the hour indeed. Yeah, let's be honest, that's two stories there we've now had in this episode of kind of the same trope.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see Peter's justification for the third and final story for this instalment of JSAPRIL on the Earth 2 podcast.
Well, Hour-Man completed everyone round the table on the cover of All-Star Comics 3, so now moving on to the other JSAers. One of the stalwarts, of course, was Dr. Midnight.
Yes, one of the first new recruits.
How could we possibly cover not Dr. Midnight? Well, there was a Quality Comics character called Midnight.
Yes, that's right. Created by Jack Cole at the direction of Quality Comics publisher Everett Arnold in case Will Eisner was killed during World War II. This is true. They were worried about not having any more Spirit stories, so just in case the worst happened, Jack Cole created Dave Clark. Not the drummer from the Dave Clark 5, obviously, or the DJ. Dave Clark, who's basically a sort of radio announcer who chose to dress up as a character who appeared on his station and then kept sort of being him after successfully dealing with some badness. So, are you going to say that there's now a story where Midnight becomes a doctor?
If only. I really hoped there had been. And I scoured, sir. I scoured.
Yes.
That's not the case. However, he did have a supporting character.
Tenuous? No.
He did have a supporting character called Doc Wackey.
Of course he did.
And we're going to do it Doc Wackey's introductory story, because, of course, that will be Doc and Midnight.
Listeners, this is a free podcast. You have no right to complain. We're putting in a lot of work, international efforts here with our cast, and Logan taking time out of his busy schedule to help us here. So, yes, from Smash Comics issue 23, published on 18th of April 1941, Midnight meeting a doctor. Pause for y'all to take that in, for y'all to finish groaning. Anyway, are we going to bother with the cover of issue 23 of Smash Comics?
The cover features Bozo the Robot, Espionage, The Jester.
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Look at Espionage. We need to find a story with Espionage because I want to do his voice like that.
These are all the banners down the left-hand side, incidentally, folks. So there's Bozo the Robot.
Yes.
Bozo the Robot is a very retro-looking robot. There's Espionage, who's wearing a green hat. He has a pencil-thin moustache, suited,
And a monocle.
and a monocle.
Pure class.
Then we have the Jester, who is one of my favourites. And at the bottom, there is Midnight.
Yeah, the Jester must, let me think, he's maybe a couple of months away from appearing in Opal City Confidential. But he will pop up because Ross is kind of getting to that period when it gets a bit patchy just before Jack goes into space. So if you're not already listening to Opal City Confidential, listeners, please do. I pop up on it occasionally if that doesn't put you off. But yes, the main image then of the cover of Smash Comics number 23.
Is the Ray swinging on a lamppost, punching out some bad guys.
Yes, and one of the bad guys looks like Alan Carr off of the television.
Oh, you've made that cover so much better for me now.
Really? Oh, right, okay.
Because I have an intense dislike for Alan Carr.
I said hello to him once in the Marks and Spencers at Victoria Station in London.
Okay.
He just walked past and I went, all right, Alan. Just to make my mate Tony laugh more than anything else. So, we will go straight to the story. We begin with a very dynamic overhead shot looking down at the tops of some buildings. And our hero is announced with a caption that reads,
Here he is, Midnight, with Gabby the talking monkey.
Yes, and hanging off of the loop of the G in Midnight is a little talking monkey, and who better to voice the talking monkey than our good friend Logan McFarlane as Gabby cries,
Hiya, gang!
We're told the story is,
By Jack Cole.
and a further caption sets the scene.
By day, he is just Dave Clark, spot announcer for station UXAM. But when night shadows fall, he dons the eerie garb of Midnight, mighty friend of the needy and foe of the underworld.
It's the eerie garb is basically a blue suit and a red tie and a black hat and a black domino mask. He does look an awful lot like the Spirit, it must be said. Is the Spirit ever going to appear on the Earth 2 podcast?
Not sure.
Never say never. Right. A small arrow caption leads us into the story properly.
Our story opens in the big city National Bank. An old man enters the president's office.
The president is an older-looking, very heavy-set, bald fellow, and the old man in front of him has a long white beard, a little tuft of white hair. He's wearing a purple suit, a yellow shirt. He's wearing a green hat, and he's saying,
Mr. Mills, I'll be brief. Would you give $100,000 to regain your youth?
Mr. Mills spits out his cigar in astonishment and says,
Will I give... Huh? My youth? What is this, a gag?
and the old man says,
Quite.
and brings up what looks like some kind of pea shooter or pipe to his mouth and blows into it with a and with a tiny zip sound effect. We see a projectile capsule flying from it into the mouth of Mr. Mills. A caption reads,
Into the banker's mouth flies the capsule, and an unbelievable transformation takes place. From man to boy to baby in 1 minute.
yes, Mr. Mills, and then he looks astonished as he shrinks and youths, and then the baby exclaims, the naked baby then starts to play with the pen and the inkwell as the old man, very proud of himself he seems to be, as he says,
There. By the grace of my discovery, he is young again. It's only right that such a service be rewarded.
he picks up the phone on Mr. Mills' desk and speaks into it.
Vault room? Bring in 100,000 and big bills to my office.
A moment or so later, the door to the office opens, and the young man in a smart suit, holding a bag with a dollar sign on it, steps into the room saying,
Here it is, Mr. Mills, but where is...
he looks astonished because there's no sign of his boss. The old man says,
Hold it.
brings his pipe up to his mouth, fires again. The capsule enters the mouth of this poor bank clerk, who with an astonished look on his face, is instantly youthed into being a baby. The old man puts on his hat, addresses the camera, and says,
You two are once more a child, through the courtesy of Dr. Wackey. I really should charge for both jobs, but alas, I am a charitable man. Good day, children.
Near panic rages throughout big city as 5 more banks are robbed. Among those interested is Dave Clark.
always makes me laugh because, the Dave Clark fight.
I know.
The Dave Clark, see, here's the thing. 1993, when I was first collecting and reading All-Star Squadron, was when there was a real boom in BBC Two and Channel 4 showing archive repeats of old 60s music programmes, and
Sure.
Dave Clark, the drummer of the Dave Clark 5, had the rights to Ready Steady Go, so Channel 4 were showing Ready Steady Go, so there was tons of Dave Clark content, so I cannot separate them. I just think that moody, self-important drummer of a mediocre band who had a couple of good singles, let's be honest, but I'm distracted by it perpetually. Anyway, we see Dave Clark sat with his feet up on his desk. He doesn't appear to be wearing socks, listeners. That's appalling. Maybe it's just the colouring. Reading a newspaper and saying to himself, another kidnap robbery. At each kidnap victim replaced by a baby. By George, this case is ripe for picking. I think I'll hang around a bank for a couple of days. Try to do my Dave Clark voice.
I can't. Several days later, across from the City Trust Company...
Yes, we see Dave with a pipe, having his lunch order delivered by a very charming waitress. He's looking out the large circular window. We can see the City Trust Company across the road, and Dave's thinking, "Ho hum, looks like I'm waiting in vain." Then he pauses and thinks, "That's a queer-looking duck coming out," as a man in purple carrying a briefcase emerges from the building.
Abruptly, a bank guard emerges.
The bank guard, bearing a pistol, running after this figure, yells,
"Halt!" But before he can shoot...
But then we see he's starting to shrink, and it seems to be a little boy who says,
I said...
He is changed to a baby!
Yes, and the poor baby with his hat falling off as he ends up on the pavement yells,
Wah!
Dave Clark bursts out of the charming diner that he was attending, saying, "Red fire! From man to infant and nothing flat! The crook's escaping!" There's a young boy there on a bicycle, and Dave hands him some cash and says, "Here's $30, son. Buy a new bike."
Dave draws a secret vacuum gun and fires.
Yes, close up of Dave firing his gun, and we get a nice little insert showing the detail of the gun, that it has a reel and a strong cord and a suction cup, so he's firing this after the gun. There's a bam as the gun fires. Dave thinks, "Hope the cord will reach."
The suction cup sticks to Dr. Wackey's car. They're off.
Yes, the car roars off. Dave on this borrowed bicycle in hot pursuit. Dave says, "So the bank presidents weren't kidnapped after all. They were changed to babies. But how?" A slight narrative leap here as we arrive at a very fancy building in the middle of nowhere with a door opening up, the car disappearing inside as Dave pulls up on the bike exclaiming, "A drawbridge!" And indeed, the drawbridge in front of him on two massive gold hinges lifts up. Dave now can't, of course, follow the car because this little house with the doorway that the car's going into is set on an island in the middle of a moat. Now, big city must be a very interesting place to live if this is what's in the immediate locale. Dave continues to himself, "This is where I get off." But tonight, midnight picks up where Dave Clark left off, and we get a slow dissolve.
That night, Midnight speeds toward the island with Gabby, his talking monkey.
Yes, and take a drink, listeners, because there's a massive crescent moon in the evening sky. It's huge, it's bigger than the house. But we see a very bright and shiny gold saloon car approaching. The drawbridge is still up. Dave and Gabby, the talking monkey, are inside. Dave says, "There it is, Gab."
Whoa, spooky, ain't it?
Dave and Gabby get out of the car. Dave says, "Don't know what we'd do without the vacuum gun." And he fires the gun with a plunk and a thud. The cord and the suction cup connect with the drawbridge, and Dave swings him and Gabby out over the moat towards the island. Gabby exclaims,
Whee!
"Shh! Do you want to give us away?" says Dave, and take another drink, listeners, because the crescent moon has got bigger and thicker. Goodness me. As David and Gabby are about to alight on the island, Dave says, "Now to find a way into..." Whoops! He exclaims, because right where they were about to land, a massive hole has appeared in the ground. Gabby exclaims,
A trap!
Down a chute they go, into a cage in Dr. Wackey's lab.
and we see them descending the chute into the cage, right enough, beautifully illustrated. Dr. Wackey is there to greet them, standing under a very bright overhead light. Dr. Wackey has obviously just made himself a cup of tea or some coffee or something. As Midnight arrives in the cage, the Doctor exclaims,
Midnight! This is indeed a surprise. Old Doc Wackey is honoured by your presence. How did you get across? By boat?
"No, by gun. Like this," says Midnight, who fires his gun, and the suction cup strikes Dr. Wackey on the nose. Dr. Wackey exclaims, "Huh?" And Gabby says,
"Ha! Reel in, pal. You got a sucker."
So yes, obviously, using the cord and the rewind function on the gun, Midnight starts to wind the cord back in, drawing Doc Wackey towards him and Gabby.
Talking monkey? Stop pulling, it hurts. I'm an old man.
Yes, poor Doc Wackey's drawn at speed towards the cage. Midnight then says, "Grab the keys, Gab." And Gabby reaches out towards the keys, which are hanging from Dr. Wackey's pockets.
Gabby unlocks the cage door.
Midnight steps forward, saying, "The gig is up, Wackey. You're going to change those babies back to normal condition, or else."
But what have I done?
We see here that Dr. Wackey is fiddling about with his hands behind his back as he talks to Midnight. Midnight can't see what he's doing. The Doctor continues,
I've given them something that every man desires. Youth, and a chance to relive one's life. And all I have asked in return is a small fee to carry on my work.
We then see that he's been fiddling about with his pipe that he's used on the bank guard and Mr. Mills and everyone else. He brings it forward, saying,
Just imagine, we'll be able to give youth to all our great men so that they may contribute another lifetime of service to humanity. All it takes is a tube, a capsule, and a...
He fires again. Oh! Exclaims Midnight as the capsule enters his gob, and then he starts to shrink, saying, "Why, you double-crossing crackpot, I ought to go." Gabby's astonished. He yells,
Midnight, you're shrinking!
Dr. Wackey looks very happy at what's going on. Gabby is leaping up and down, saying,
You fiend! Bring him back! I'll do anything you say! If only you bring him back!
Dr. Wackey leans down towards Gabby, saying,
But I don't know whether I can restore him or not. This powder might do the trick, but I haven't tested it yet.
And at this point he points to some powder which is on a folded up piece of paper on his laboratory bench.
And don't know whether it'll kill or cure the subject.
Dr. Wackey has picked up baby Midnight at this point and starts walking him and Gabby back towards the cage, saying,
Come, children, into your crib. Old Doc Wackey has an appointment with financier Doble Assets.
Gabby isn't having this as Wackey carries him along by the tail. He's waving around his arms, shouting,
Let go, I say! You can't leave him like this!
There's a slow dissolve.
After Doc leaves,
Poor Gabby, almost alone in the cage, but he notices a very beautifully rendered old-fashioned vacuum cleaner has been left rather carelessly by the Doc, very close to the cage. Gabby has an idea. He extends his tail to try and grab the nozzle, and we hear him saying,
Poor Dave. If only I could reach the vacuum cleaner.
He's successful.
Contact!
Gabby draws the Hoover, as we would probably say in West Central Scotland, towards him, starts to disassemble it, saying,
Now to remove the dust bag and place the nozzle over the powder.
So this is what he does. He disconnects the pipe from the main body of the vacuum cleaner, but stretches out the nozzle indeed over the powder that was left on the bench. Activates the Hoover, switches it on so it starts to draw in the powder. Gabby then says,
Inhale, Dave! It's your only chance!
And we see the powder coming out the other end of the pipe, blowing the powder straight into Dave's face. And thankfully,
it works. The powder restores Dave to normal.
Thank goodness for that. We see Midnight fully restored. And as Midnight knots his tie, pulls his hat back on and fixes his mask back into position, he's saying, What an ordeal! And what a hangover!
Thank gravy you're okay. If that powder had killed you, I'd never forgive myself. But how'll we get out? Doc Wackey's gonna pull his tricks on rich Mr. Assets.
Midnight isn't fazed. He produces a bottle of liquid, pours it onto the lock of the cage, saying, Acid'll take care of the lock, then we'll take care of Wackey.
Later at Doble Assets skyscraper penthouse.
Doble Assets, that's a name to conjure with. Very striking low angle here. We're down behind Doc Wackey. We see his name on his bag as he addresses his latest target. We also see that Doc Wackey has his right hand behind his back and is holding his blowpipe, ready to use it. He's saying,
So, you laugh at my proposition?
And Doble Assets, who's a large, cheery-looking fellow in a green suit and a big red chair, throws his head back and roars, What could be funnier? Ha 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 ho ho! Dr. Wackey brings his blowpipe around to use it, but he's interrupted as a hand reaches forward, grabs it from his mouth, saying, Fork over the bean shooter. Yes, Midnight has arrived just in time. Dr. Wackey exclaims,
No, you don't!
and leaps out the window. Midnight yells, Stop! You'll be... While this is all happening, a dazzled Doble Assets yells, What is this? First panel of the final page, we see that Doc Wackey has leapt out the window and a parachute has appeared out of his bag. A crescent moon, take a drink listeners, looms behind the tall office building as Midnight looks out the window and yells, So, as he sees how Wackey has managed to escape. As Wackey drifts towards the ground, he is thinking,
I was prepared for this. Never go up in a skyscraper without one.
Attaching the suction gun, Midnight dives.
Very exciting. Midnight attaches the suction gun indeed to presumably the roof of the room he was in on top of the building and releases it so that he's dropping down towards Wackey. He says, Right behind you. We can see him casting a shadow as he falls. Really, really nice detailed artwork. In the next panel, Dr. Wackey has made his way to his getaway car and roars off, leaving a cloud of smoke as Midnight crosses to his own car, saying, After him, Gab, and his plucky monkey pal yells,
Right.
The next panel, very exciting. We see that Gabby and Dave have managed to pull up alongside the car that Dr. Wackey is in. The cars draw level. Midnight leaps from his own car towards the doctor's, saying, Pull over, Wackey, and Gabby yells,
Get him, Dave.
Doc's car swerves out of control.
Dynamic action here, beautifully rendered as the car veers off the side of a bridge. Midnight yells, Hey! There's a massive
Crash.
as Midnight manages to keep a hold of the side of the bridge as the car plummets into the water below. Midnight hauls Doc Wackey from the water, saying, Come on, Doc, it's the hoosgow for you.
But I haven't committed any crime. I've merely discovered the secret to eternal youth. And you brand me a crook. just because I ask a small fee for my services.
Pulled out the water, we can see that Dr. Wackey amusingly has a couple of reeds stuck in his hair as Midnight pontificates. Look, Wackey, I'll admit you hitting something stupendous, but why cheapen it by stooping to robbery? If you really want to be good, forget the sign of the dollar.
Perhaps you're right, but it's too late now.
Tell you what, I'm going to give you another chance. How would you like to join up with us and work against crime?
Do you mean it? Why, this is wonderful. Yes, by all means.
Midnight starts to lead Wackey up from the side of the river. Up a hill we can see another beautiful crescent moon taking a little drink. And Midnight and Wackey climb over the fence at the side of the road as we see Gabby, the talking monkey, standing beside their car as Midnight says, "Then meet Gabby, your new partner."
A pleasure, but why the stilts?
I thought Gabby just had really long legs, but no, he clarifies by saying,
It's the only way I can reach the pedals to drive.
And so Midnight gains another ally. What invention will the Doc bring forth to be used against crime? Don't miss the next issue of Smash Comics.
That was wonderful. The artwork in that was sensational.
It was lovely, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jack Cole, outstanding, brilliant stuff. Jack Cole probably most famous for Plastic Man, but
Yes.
Midnight is, it's great.
Yeah, lovely sort of shifts in perspective and detail and all the buildings, and I lost count of how many crescent moons we had there.
And it got big at each panel.
Yes, I know.
it's great.
What's all that about? I think, was the Spectre involved? Maybe it was one of those super moons that people talk about
Could be.
sometimes. Do you know, I think that's the first Midnight story I've read that wasn't All-Star Squadron issue 31 or 32.
Oh, Midnight stories are great. No, they're a lot of fun.
Very interesting.
And they're all in the public domain, folks. You can go to Comic Book Plus is where we go to for our public domain comics whenever we're researching any of this stuff, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, you can read it there. Because it's in the public domain, we'll be able to put it on the entire story on the socials this week. It's very interesting. I hope that Doc Wackey's first act after Midnight has sort of talked him round here was to go round and give all the money back and restore everyone back to their normal ages.
Well, now we know the powder can restore them,
Yes.
and yes, that's great.
It's a good thing that it did. It's interesting. I don't think Gabby appeared in All-Star Squadron, did he?
No.
And thanks to Logan for taking time out of his
Yes.
busy schedule.
Cheeky monkey that you are.
Yes. I mean, I need the origin story of this monkey that can drive, this monkey that is technically minded and is intelligent enough to articulate and speak and dismantle vacuum cleaners when it's necessary.
Always.
There must be more to this.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to have to do some more digging on Comic Book Plus to read some more Midnight? I think I'm going to have to. Maybe
Yes.
I'll just start hassling DC for a DC Finest collection.
Can you imagine?
I'm imagining it right now. So, listeners, that was a bit contentious, that one, really. There was a Doc and there was a Midnight. Forgive us.
Yes. There were crescent moons.
Yeah.
There we
perfect.
are. Okay.
You know what?
It's almost like we planned this.
It works.
Almost.
It
like we planned
works.
this.
Yes, that all works. And I have to say, it was a pleasure to read it. The artwork is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly compared to the Bernard Bailey story that we did, with no disrespect to Bernard.
It's the best out of the three.
I would say so, very much so. Vibrant, dynamic, striking, and coherent.
Yes.
And no real massive wrong footing or anything.
It's also not aged as badly as the other two stories have.
Yes.
Definitely.
And let's be honest, nothing could have aged as badly as that Hour-Man story.
Listeners, what do you think about that Hour-Man story? Why don't you write to us and let us know? You can email us at theearth2podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on social media because we're putting up lots of lovely bonus material for this and indeed every episode, including the full Midnight story. On Facebook and Instagram, we're at the Earth 2 Podcast, and on Twitter, we're at podcast_Earth2, and it's the number 2 for all of our socials.
It certainly is. As I always say at this point, if you're enjoying what we do, please consider going to wherever it is you receive your podcast and leaving us a positive review. If you feel even more generous, you could find your way to our Linktree page and buy Peter the price of a beverage on our coffee page. That'd be lovely. We would encourage you to click on the JSAPRIL hashtag and check out some of the other stuff that's going on this month. Lots of bloggers and other podcasters taking part. We're recording this on the 2nd of April. Last night I read friend of the show, Martin Gray's little piece on DC 2000, which was fun to revisit. I can't believe that's 25 years ago.
Gasp.
I mean,
I always remember the Informatioscope from that. That's a great bit of...
yeah. I always liked how it was sort of told from the point of view of the JSA, so that when Superman and Wonder Woman and Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern arrived, like Hawkman and Hawkgirl were just astonished. I remember it very well. And lots more is going on besides. Ross, our pal Ross, has guested on A World on Fire. I believe they're dealing with issue World Finest so that Ross can talk about Starman over there. That's worth checking out. And there is a lot more besides. That's just a couple of folk that we know. Listeners, we would encourage you to dig deep. There are dozens of people involved, and it's our pleasure to take part as well. We will be back next week with our final instalment of...
I can't believe it's not the Justice Society.
And until then,
I've been Peter.
I've been David.
And we'll see you next week on
The
Earth 2 Podcast.
Transmatter cube activated. Return coordinates set for Earth Prime.